them. I have a painful question that I wish I didn't have to ask, and it's one that troubles me, and I think it troubles many. We have had 66 strikes reported on boats in the Caribbean and Pacific, and 215 people have been killed. Some have been killed as they were survivors clinging to wreckage. Others have not been killed and been rescued. Some of the strikes are against fishing boats. I'd like to introduce an article from The Guardian, April 27. We were terrified they were going to kill us. Fishers who survived U.S. boat strike speak out, if I could put it into the record. The question that I'm trying to grapple with is, are the 215 people that have been killed by the U.S. military, are they combat casualties or murder victims? Now, I'm at a disadvantage because there's so much I know I can't describe. I have seen the legal rationale for these strikes, but because it's classified, I can't describe it. I have seen the president's list of designated terrorist organizations against whom we can make strikes, but because it's classified, I can't describe it. And because it's classified, those who are being struck don't even know. They don't even know that they have been determined by the President of the United States to be combatants. I have seen the video of the strikes, including the strikes of survivors to clinging wreckage, but that's classified and has not been shown to the American public, even though the American public is often seeing videos of the strike to show, isn't that great, the shock and awe, we can sink a boat. Most importantly, I've also seen the targeting criteria, who we target with these strikes. But I can't describe those because they've only been shown to me in classified. And I've reviewed the strike files of the first 46 of the 66 strikes to see whether they're being done consistent with the targeting criteria. So here is what troubles me on this question, combat casualties or murder victims. Congress has not declared war, so this is not a congressionally authorized military action. The president has justified the action by saying it's an attack on narco-terrorists. But while I can't describe the targeting criteria, we had a hearing within the last month with the Secretary of State, and we discussed, Senator Paul and I, things that are not the targeting criteria. You know, so for example, I used an obvious example that people on the boat are right-handed. That's not a targeting criteria. That's an obvious one. Mm-hmm. But we have been surprised to learn, and I have confirmed this through my review of the files and with my conversations with the military leading this effort, that presence of drugs on the boat is not a targeting criteria. There need be no evidence of presence of drugs on the boat. That's not a targeting criteria. In addition, the presence of arms on the boat is not a targeting criteria. And so folks who are being attacked, and 215 who have been killed, there's no requirement that there be any evidence that they either have narcotics with them or arms with them. And my review of 46 of the 66 files, I still have 20 to review, tells me that the military is acting upon the targeting criteria that they are using, but for some unexplained reason, and Secretary Rubio couldn't explain it to me, you could have had a targeting criteria, there must be drugs on the boat. You could have had a targeting criteria, these folks must be armed, and yet the administration has decided to use neither as targeting criteria. So the question, Mr. Kozak, I'm really grappling with, and it's a legal question certainly, but it's also a moral one, is how should I consider the 215 people who've been killed by the United States military when they are being struck by the U.S. military without a congressional authorization, without even any notice that they are on this secret list of DTOs, and without the requirement of any evidence that they either possess narcotics or weapons? Why should I believe these are combat casualties rather than murder victims?
Well, Senator, you've probably got the advantage on me in having had those classified briefings, which I have not. All I can say is that our colleagues at the Department of War have been clear that the strikes are only when they have good, solid reason to believe that the people that they're targeting are active members of one of these designated organizations. As far as I know, the terrorist designations, so are public. I mean, when
the FTO designations are public, but the military action is authorized against the DTOs that are on the classified list that are still secret. And so, I mean, and just to discuss, this is a little odd. Think about this. A declaration of war tells the enemy, listen, if you associate with al-Qaeda, we're coming after you, if it's a public declaration of war. But if you do a listing of secret organizations against whom the president authorizes military action, and you keep it classified and you don't make it public, you know, who's to know I'm getting on a boat and, boy, this boat happens to be on a secret list and the military can attack it. You give no notice to anyone that they should conform their behavior in such a way that they're not subject to being hit by a U.S. drone strike or missile or other weapon system.
You know, I think probably the people who are hiring onto these boats have a pretty good idea what they're doing. But look, this is something that should be discussed, as you've been, in classified session and with our colleagues from the Department of War, because you know, my involvement in it has been in the case of the two survivors of one of the strikes. It was getting them back home again. I was involved in that effort, but I don't know the rest.
I get it, we should have this discussion, including in classified, but the Pentagon has no trouble going out and showing a video of a boat strike and saying, we got narco-terrorists. And then I go look at the file and I look at the targeting criteria and I say, where's the evidence? I mean, again, the administration could have made presence of narcotics or presence of arms a targeting criteria. They chose not to. And the files of the strikes demonstrate that. And so I have not yet gotten an answer from Secretary Rubio. I've asked this of the boss, the Secretary of State and the Pentagon. Why didn't you put in a targeting criteria? If you're going to say you're killing narco-terrorists, why didn't you put in a targeting criteria that there had to be evidence of narcotics on the boat? Or at a minimum, that there had to be evidence of arms on the boat, so you were taking action against somebody who could have meant you harm with some arms system. You could have made that a criteria, and you chose not to. I have yet to get a good answer for that. And so the question, I understand, kind of where you are in the chain of command, but the State Department is the sort of space in the federal government where the rules of international law are embraced and sort of understood and promulgated to the remainder of the U.S. government. That is a State Department responsibility. And so, Mr. Chair, I probably, with this witness, I mean, he's done as good a job as he probably can in answering the question, but I have been encouraging my colleagues, do what I have done. Go to the SCIF and look at the strike files. The United States military is killing people and bragging about it without a war authorization, and in many cases without evidence that they possess any narcotics or any arms, which means that the threat that they pose to the United States thousands of kilometers from here is so attenuated. I mean, look, we wouldn't on the streets of the United States say, hey, somebody, we think they're connected, with a drug gang, so let's just kill them. I mean, we would never do that. We think somebody's connected to a drug gang. There's some level of certainty they're connected to a drug gang. We don't have to see if they're carrying drugs or arms or anything. We can just kill them. We would never do that. No one would accept that. And if we won't accept it here, how can we perpetrate it elsewhere? That is the painful question I'm trying to get an answer to, and thus far I haven't.